come back and say, well, they didn't all fall down.
It just gave me chill bumps.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Okay, do we have walls that need to fall down? Guess who we need to call on to have them fall down? Now, as you start taking notes, there's 4 things to do when you're in conflict. So hopefully these will be notes that you can go back to when that conflict arises and you go, oh yeah, I had that class. What did we learn? Because it sure feels like the conflict right now is between me and my mother-in-law. Or whoever, fill in the blank. Employer, boss, husband, child, almost any relative you can almost put in there. Now, in your book on page 136, you have the story of David and Goliath. In the middle of that story, 1 Samuel 17:45 says, and David said to the Philistine, you have come to me with a sword, and I have a spear with a javelin, but I have come to you with the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defiled. You know, I've heard that story of David and Goliath how many times? And yet I could not have told you before this week when I studied this what name of God David called upon. He called on the Lord of hosts. He's like, I need the big kahunas. This is not going to be the battle that I'm going to win. I need an army here. I need God's army to fight this. So that popped out. And so it was the Lord's battle. That's number 1 thing to do. When you're in the battle, you remember, number 1, the battle is the Lord's. Now, when I was in Israel, and David was standing there with that slingshot, we got to go visit where this battle took place. We got to go to the very creek bed where David selected his 5 stones out of. They allow you to take as many stones out as you want to. So this is a stone from that creek bed. And so I'm like, hey, free souvenirs, right? I'm like, you know, how many rocks can I really carry out of here? And so it's sort of dried up now, but it's full of rocks, full of rocks. And so when I got home, I was like, what do I want to do with these? And so I went through and I read the story, and I said, you know what, I want to put them in a pouch, and I want to save them for very special occasions to give to people that are going through unbelievable battles. They have a tough battle on their hand. I said, Lord, I just don't want to give them the stone. I want to give them the scripture. So I printed up these pieces of paper that basically explained where the stone came from. That was right where David chose the stone that defeated Goliath. And I said, may this help inspire your faith in the battle of your life. For the battle is the Lord's. 1 Samuel 17:47. So, we have a sister right now who's fighting a battle, whose husband needs a lot of prayer.
You're going to make me cry.
So, my sister in prayer, partner that prays with me before we teach, the battle's not yours, it's the Lord's. Okay. Now, in our little discussion yesterday, last week, 2 weeks ago, I guess it was 2 weeks ago, we were a little off topic, but Jessica brought out a very good point. She said when anything is hit with a slingshot, it does what? You thought it was loaded, didn't you?
I did. I did. Just in your hand, you just
That's
like,
exactly the reaction I wanted. That's exactly. Yeah. If you hit anything with a slingshot, Physics tells you it's going to go backwards. How did the Goliath fall?
Face forward.
Face forward.
On his side.
God wanted to show them it was him, it was the Lord of hosts, it was the army that pushed Goliath down. It wasn't even the stone in the slingshot. Pretty cool when you learn something new about a story that's told since you're a child. There's so much richness in the depth of the scripture about really what really goes on. Also on page 136 was the story of Hannah. Were the two stories, big stories that you read about in your homework. Just to recap, Hannah was barren. She was heavily mocked by the other wives. And it says she wept bitterly in great distress. And then she called out to the Lord of hosts. She went right to the top, I call them top dogs in the morning session. I was like, that doesn't sound, I'd like apologize to God. So I'm going to go back with the big kahunas. 1 Samuel 1:18 says, then after she called on the Lord of hosts, it said she was no longer sad. Her countenance changed before she got pregnant, before she saw any sign of what God did. Her countenance changed just by knowing the name of God that she had called upon. I think that's something important for us to try to follow up with. So, when I was in the middle on Tuesdays, I sort of re-look over my notes and everything I prepared to get it sort of fresh in my head for teaching on Wednesday morning. And I happened to be going through this section on Hannah when I got a text. I got a text from a pastor's daughter who is married in Atlanta, has a couple of children, a 2-year-old which was adopted. She knew that it would be a special needs child. The mother had abused drugs, but they felt like the Lord wanted them to adopt this child. I've gotten to know the child, and she also has a daughter. And she just learned that she was going to have to move from Atlanta to Chicago. And I've been talking with her for a couple of weeks, helping her process all of this, as I'm very good friends with the pastor's family. And her parents live 3 hours away, one set of grandparents, and 4 hours away another. So they visit a lot between Charlotte and Atlanta, and between Columbia and Atlanta. And so she's sort of going to have her world, and she's moving, she has to be there by June. And so she said, I found myself, even though I knew all these truths, I find myself just weeping bitterly one day. I was like, she goes, I knew I was in the flesh. I knew that I wasn't listening to the Spirit, but I just couldn't get there. I just couldn't get out of this frustrating, the way I felt. And so she said, then when I got to the end of the rope, I remembered that a couple of weeks ago you told me to use the names of God, A through Z, the exercise that we'd done several weeks ago. So she says that she started doing that. And then the letters came on the text, whoa, capital letters. I started to see who God was and who I was as I started to do that. And I started to be more led by the Spirit than by the flesh. And so when I saw Hannah, I was like, okay, Hannah wept bitterly. This young mom was weeping bitterly. So I said to her, okay, now the next thing you need to do, Hannah says in verse 19, she started to worship the Lord. So first she called on the name of the Lord, and then she followed it up with worship. So I said, okay, put on the praise music. I'm texting back, put on the praise music today. Just let it flood your house. Just worship him today. And she goes, already ahead of you. I just put on some music, and this morning when I was in my bathroom, it brought me to my knees. And it was a song called Be Still and Know That I Am Lord. So she followed this pattern that Hannah followed, which is a very good pattern for us. When we have those days where we just can't seem to get out, we know in our mind what the right thing is to do, but we're struggling to get there. Just take a step back, call on the name of the Lord, let that sink in, and then just start playing the praise music. And at first you might not feel like praising from, like you're like, I'm trying to get my heart to where I need to match it up. But it gets there. It gets there. Okay, on the bottom of page 136 is a paragraph. Well, it's not close to the bottom. It says both Hannah and David. Okay, can somebody read that paragraph?
Both Hannah and David called upon the Lord of hosts and found deliverance. Deliverance is there for you as well, whatever your situation. Yet his name cannot be used as a sort of magic cure-all. Remember, it is the righteous who run into it and are safe.
Okay, no hocus pocus, no magic cure-all. Okay, so at your tables right now, I want you to discuss why the name can't be used as a magic cure-all, hocus pocus, and is there a responsibility on our part when we look at what David and Hannah did as they called out on the name of the Lord? Okay?